and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and we're back to have another conversation with a person making valiant efforts to change the economy and the recycling system for the better. You know, successful recycling programs start with accurate sorting of materials, which results in cleaner and more efficient processing to make new feedstocks or raw materials that can be used for the next generation of products and packaging. But sorting relies on a foundation of accurate information to ensure things that look alike but are chemically different get sent to the right processors. Here are two common examples of products that look alike but are chemically different. First, batteries. Many of them use different elements to store energy. And the second, and this one always surprises people, the number one plastic thermoform clamshell packaging that you get at, for instance, with your greens at the grocery store, melt at a different temperature than the number one plastic beverage bottles that we also buy. They're both number one plastic, but they can't be mixed in the recycling process. So we have to separate them. And that's what our guest today, Jacqueline Claudia, is doing with her company, Smarter Sorting. She's a new CEO. They recently raised some money and she took over as the leader of the company. And they offer a tool called the Product Intelligence Platform that retailers can use to catalog and accurately sort materials in the back of their stores. The platform also produces greater efficiency and accountability in the circular supply chain. For example, a retailer can recover more value for the materials because they're less contaminated, as well as explain what they recycled as part of their ESG or environmental, social, and governance reporting. Waste management companies, too, or donation partners that Smarter Sorting works with, such as Feeding America, can also plan their work when they pick up materials based on how much has been collected at a location. As I said, Smarter Sorting recently raised another $25 million in capital, bringing it to a grand total of $62.2 million. Sounds like they're well-funded, and Jacqueline took over recently. You can learn more about Smarter Sorting at smartersorting.com. No space or dash between smarter and sorting, smartersorting.com. Welcome to the show, Claudia. How are you? Jacqueline, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mitch. Thanks for having me.
Sorry, I have to roll off all this stuff and I got your name wrong. But so congratulations on the new role that you have at Smarter Sorting and winning all the additional funding. There's a lot of moving parts to this story, but let me ask you this simple question. How do you explain to your parents what you do and why it matters?
I love that question when I saw it here because my parents are just like your parents. What I tell them we do is we understand what products actually are, what's in them, what size, how much do they weigh, so that we can make better decisions about what to do with them. So for example, if we want to know if something's toxic, we can examine the ingredient list and determine if there's any ingredients on there that are toxic. Or if I need to throw that product away, we need to have data that tells us what we can do with it legally and environmentally responsibly in the back of a store. So we have a system that's based on data that has tools that makes that data actionable. So one example of this is you can scan a product in the back of a store that you need to dispose of, and you can get instructions for what's the right thing to do with that product, which allows everyone in a store from, your lovely granddaughter, Lucia, who's 18, straight up to folks who've been working in logistics in the store for years and years and years to be able to make consistent data-driven decisions and track them.
And that's interesting because what that allows you to do with the guidance is build a habit. And then it's no longer necessary to check that, but you have more bandwidth mentally to check the next thing you don't know. And so in a lot of ways, it's the foundation for us learning to be sustainable. Now, the heart of the product intelligence platform is this database. What kind of information do you put in it? You described some things, but what specifically makes the difference between two different materials that you need to separate?
Well, I want to be crystal clear in that today we are mostly focused on what's inside the product, not necessarily the packaging that the product comes in, right? Although we are moving rapidly into that. And by later this year, we can have another interesting conversation about what we do with the packaging materials that a product comes in. But the types of information that are in our database are things around the ingredients of a product, as well as what some of the physical and chemical attributes of those are. So what's the flash point of it? At what temperature does it catch on fire?
Interesting. Now, how does Smarter Sorting data assist further upstream in the recycling process, does it reduce the need for additional machine sorting or other expenses in terms of getting the material to the right processor?
So we have a partnership with US Ecology, and our systems talk to their systems. So that allows US Ecology to understand exactly what the waste stream is in the back of the store so that they know and they're prepared to handle it appropriately. But I think the biggest, most powerful part of our system is that it allows retailers to make more proactive decisions at the product procurement level so that they're buying products that are easier to dispose of and easier to kind of sort into the right waste streams so that there's some efficiency at that perspective. In terms of being able to sort those clamshells, those two different number one plastics, that's still something that there's a need to kind of handle differently downstream. But what we can do is make sure that the right materials are ending up in the right streams at that initial collection point in the process.
And that's really the key, and that they're not necessarily mixed together so that there's less to pick apart later on. So again, more efficiency.
And also, from a data perspective, we can help provide some leverage in the system, right? So, as you know today, sometimes a bottle will be made of one plastic and the cap will be made of another, but they're disposed of together, which makes it really difficult to be able to handle that efficiently. Right. We can call to light the fact that this product has two different plastics and allow someone like the retailer to say to the person who's producing the product, hey guys, if you made this one little change, we could handle this product completely differently and it would be better for everyone.
Well, and that feedback system is going to be critically important. But how do you get this information? That must require a great deal of interaction with the product manufacturers. Or do you actually research all this yourself?
No, we rely on getting the information right from the horse's mouth because that's where it's most accurate. But what I'm really proud of is our efforts to kind of make that process as frictionless as possible. So there's a lot of data out there about products already. So ingredients are housed in some databases, information about, product claims are in other databases. We have API connections that pull that data into our system and allow the brands to kind of look at it and be like, yep, that's all accurate. I can attest to that. And then that's where the magic of our system comes in. So we take, a small amount of data points and we bounce that off of lots of different public databases like PubChem and the InkyList and the ECHA database. And, we're able to tell based on connecting it to these other sources of data and information and our experience with these materials, what it actually is, and allow us to use algorithms to determine the pieces of information that are missing from what's been already provided.
So one of the challenges with any product claim by a manufacturer is validating that it's true. And there are standards for communicating this information, but do you see additional standards or certifications beginning to emerge that not only a retailer, but a consumer might rely on to better understand the impact of what they buy and use?
Yeah, this is a rapidly growing and increasingly complex field. And as you pointed out, there are legal requirements for what claims you can make. But what we're really seeing is a move that the retailers are becoming the de facto regulators in this space. So folks like Target are saying, I don't want this ingredient in my products. And so you need to be able to verify to them that your product's free from that. The good news is with a system like ours, we can provide that double check, right? So if you say your product is free from parabens, for example, we can look not only at the ingredient list and identify that there's no parabens in the ingredients or any paraben containing ingredients, because sometimes they hide inside of other ingredients in that list. Or we can also identify products that may potentially have a contamination because of the method or the reaction that was used to create that particular product. So we can verify things like that. Free from claims are very easy for us. What the types of claims that we're not able to help with at this point today are, this is from a conflict-free mine, for example.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the aggregation of that additional social insight is going to be another level of what we're going to do to change the economy.
Yeah.
Particularly if we're going to do it equitably.
So it's not just product claims that make this really powerful, though. It's the ability for retailers and consumers to use this type of granular physical and chemistry information to find the products that they want, right? One of the most interesting examples of this for us was at the beginning of COVID. when the pandemic just came out, nobody anticipated that this would be the size and shape of a thing that it turned out to be, right? And so that means that, retailer shelves weren't filled with products which had badges on the front that said, hey, I kill COVID, right? But what we did have was different agencies like the EPA and the FDA publishing lists of ingredients and their concentration ranges that were approved to kill COVID, right? And so using those lists and that database and marrying up with what we know about products, because we know the ingredients and we know the concentration ranges of them, we were able to help retailers quickly identify, do I have anything in my product set that's going to kill COVID that doesn't say that on the front of the label, so that I can make those products front and center available to my consumers at the time that they need it.
That's interesting. So that the retailer becomes the responsive interface, not simply the interface where stuff is sold, but it's sending feedback into the system. And we need more of this too, is another thing you can anticipate falling out of the kinds of insight you're describing.
Exactly.
Now, how do you see the recycling system evolving recently? Because, in 2018, China stopped taking a lot of materials from the United States, and it shook up the recycling industry entirely, because we were just used to jamming a lot of things into a container and sending that back across the ocean.
Exactly.
Are investments starting to pay off?
I think so. I hope so. I mean, this could potentially be one of the most exciting things that's happened for everyone in this space, because it's actually forced us to kind of stop closing our eyes to what happens to it once it kind of leaves our shores or our facilities. Right. And makes us take responsibility for it. If you look at what Republic Services announced back in March, their new polymer center, which is the first time a U.S. company has developed a facility to manage packaging and those plastic streams in an integrated process, straight from curbside recycling through to the recycling of the materials to developing that high quality recycled content for consumer packaging. That's a huge innovation. That's a huge celebration. And I think we're going to start to see more and more of that happening in the U.S.
We certainly see it in the tracking we do of the recycling system. There's more options available, but not drop-off options, just more processing options. Now we have to connect the processing to what's going on out in the real world. But again, you guys are at a very important interface in that conversation.
Exactly. And this is a multi-year development process, right? And we've seen the most important part start to happen, which is the demand for it. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to be able to respond as an industry in the right way. The other place where this is really, I think, huge is looking at choices that consumers are making because objectively they're ecologically better, things like electric cars. Mm-hmm. But with that comes kind of the dark side of it, which is the lithium batteries, right? Yep. Creating new batteries, requires a stream of ingredients and minerals that are, currently available in limited supply, right? And increasing our mining operations, again, is a long-term process. And It also has, a lot of potentially disastrous environmental consequences around it, like depleting, local water resources or polluting the region with runoff or debris from it, as well as kind of the deforestation that follows around with mines. But improving our recycling technology, and we're seeing a lot of advancements there, lets us reuse these products that we've already made and keep those ingredients in circulation.
Well, and I think this is really an interesting facet of what you're doing. You're profiling everything as it enters the supply chain, which mm-hmm. means that we have a much better view of what's flowing. And frankly, we just ignored it before. So now we can begin to optimize everything. And this is a frequent topic that we discuss. What are the benefits of a well-documented economy, one that actually does account for everything? How do you see the way we do business changing as a result?
I love the fact that you use the word flowing, right? Because in a data-free world or in a disconnected world, oftentimes people want to do the right thing, but they don't actually understand what the downstream implications are of those decisions that they make. Right. Using a data-driven platform and an algorithm-driven platform like ours allows folks kind of further upstream to understand the consequences using math instantly of what's going to happen to their products downstream. So if you know, for example, that if I formulate my product in this way, this means that it's going to be determined to be this hazard class, which means it's going to need to be disposed of in this way, in this type of facility that has this greenhouse gas footprint to it. But If I tweak my formula at the very beginning, just a little bit, that fundamentally changes all of those actions that happen downstream.
And all the costs.
Exactly. And it allows us to understand kind of where the leverage points are, where we can make better decisions, and run those simulations to understand how that's going to impact the supply chain. And in terms of cost, assign the cost where it belongs. And we're seeing new EPR, legislation coming out now, which is trying to make producers responsible for the packaging decisions that they're making downstream. So I think that we're going to allow ourselves to be able to price the externalities of the system that we've created more appropriately using data. And that's a huge celebration.
Yeah, the idea of externalities is going to go away. And that's an extraordinary evolution of human thinking, finally. Now, have you thought about consumer-facing applications for your data? You must have, based on what you're talking about. How could you help people make better decisions and communicate with the retailer potentially about what they'd like to see in the store?
Oh, you've hit my soft spot, right? Like, I believe that consumers are how you change the world because they control all of the power. They determine the trends, they determine what you make to respond to them. So I see a future where we're able to use this information to allow consumers to make engaged, informed decisions about the products that they're buying. And that, being able to measure what's happening at the very beginning, we'll be able to use those insights to allow manufacturers to make the types of products that consumers want to buy. And we'll be able to empower retailers to carry the products that consumers want. But it starts with allowing consumers to be able to answer the questions that they have about products in a very data-driven, transparent way.
But the last mile here is the dialogue between the consumer and the retailer. Is that a place that smarter sorting could sit, or do you need partners to be there?
I think it takes a village. There's lots of folks working together to make this happen, but we do anticipate having a direct dialogue with consumers and using those insights to help retailers be even more proactive.
Now, you're doing some interesting work with partnering, particularly with Feeding America, where you're capturing surplus food or household essentials and distributing them to those in need. How does that program work? Tell us a little more about particularly the difference between how you do food and household items.
Yeah, I'm really proud of this. It wasn't obvious to me before I got into this business that, you're in a grocery store, you have products that you can't use because they're close to their sell-by date, or like the bottle's a little bit dented, like you name it. The idea, at least for me as an average consumer sitting at home, is, oh, well, of course that gets donated and used. Check, that's a great idea. But what happens in reality is a lot of times that product, even though people want to donate it, it doesn't get used because, if you're a food bank and all you get is 600 pounds of potatoes every day, like what can you do with that, right? You need to be able to do menu planning. And so what our system allows you to do is understand exactly what's available in what store, in what quantity, at what time. So if I'm a person working at a food bank or a community meal service, for example, I can go into the Feeding America app using using the API connection that we've made with them. I can tell that I can go and pick up 200 pounds of broccoli at this store and 600 pounds of potatoes at this store and make a really awesome soup for the folks at my kitchen. And I know I can get sheet cakes over there so that I can have a complete meal. And so we allow less food to go to waste because we make it available to people. They know exactly what it is, where it is, and when. So that's a huge celebration. The other piece of this, it's really a kind of not obvious to consumers is, it's not just food that gets donated, it's products too, right? Like jugs of bleach. You might think, who wants jugs of bleach? But, if you're operating like a food kitchen, for example, you need to disinfect it. And so if we're able to give you a dented bottle of bleach where the bleach is still perfectly good and perfectly usable inside, and you can make that environment safer for the people who work there and the people who consume the food that you're making, and keep that product from needing to go to incineration, which is what happens with jugs of bleach when they go into the disposal stream, that's a win. So I'm really proud of this work that we're doing and enabling that.
This suggests to me that there's a different approach to the way that we have to the retailer's role in society, which has been primarily distribution oriented, but in this case could really be turned more to stewardship oriented.
And that's where most retailers are wanting to go. They've just lacked the tools to be able to make those decisions in the past, and we're bringing those to market.
How did they describe that aspiration to you? I'm curious to hear what their goals are when they say we want to embrace this.
Well, one of the easiest places for you to look is, most retailers today publish a sustainability report. Mm-hmm. So they have a sustainability report. So that's a good signal out there that they actually are interested and have some energy around this. They've built teams around it and they publish what their goals are. And if you look at, for example, the Target Forward Plan, you see their initiatives about, what they want to give back to the community and how they want to measure reduction in their waste streams and how they want to measure their engagement in their different initiatives. But so it's important to not just have a goal, but have a way to do it.
Right. So it's growing out of the functionality that's available to them, and they're applying it to their social and environmental goals, in addition to just rethinking their business.
Exactly. I mean, brand is incredibly important. And having sustainability and stewardship being part of the brand ethos is a very valuable thing in today's market. Not only valuable on Wall Street, but consumers want to support companies that are doing the right thing.
So how does Smarter Sorting measure its own impact? And are you working to become a carbon neutral organization?
Absolutely, we are. So we have an impact dashboard on our website. So you can go and check it and see, as we clock the impact that we're having there, because, you get what you measure, and we want to be very transparent about what we're doing there. We're also going through the B Corp certification process ourselves as an organization, but the impact that we enable other companies to have is the huge X factor.
Well, Jacqueline, this has been a fascinating conversation. I want to thank you for spending some time with us today. How can folks follow along with what Smarter Sorting is doing?
Our website is a great place to look. If you follow our social media channels, we keep you abreast of new developments that we have, new partnerships that we've made, useful information like, hey, did you know how to recycle this? And some instructions around things like that. I think that, we're starting to get more recognized out there in the world for the work that we're doing. And it takes everybody pulling in the same direction to create the kind of change that we need. So please do engage with us because we can help.
Fantastic call to action. I love the idea of all of us getting involved. It's absolutely the first step in the recycling process. If we don't, retailers and consumers, take this effort, we're not going to clean up the planet. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me, Mitch.
We've been talking with Jacqueline Claudia. She's the CEO of Smarter Sorting, a company that makes the product intelligence platform that retailers can use to catalog what's in the back of their store and send it for accurate and efficient recycling. You can check out more about Smarter Sorting at smartersorting.com. There's no space, no dash, smartersorting.com. We're going to be back with another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear soon. In the meantime, I hope you'll take a few minutes to share this topic, the idea that everything that we can buy can be profiled, both in order to understand what's made from and what we need to do with it at end of life, in order to facilitate this circular economy that we always talk about, but don't always see a clear path to. And I think Smarter Sorting represents something that is going to drive us in the right direction and a lot faster than we may expect. Of course, we're going to be back with another innovator interview soon. In the meantime, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. Have a green day.